The visual is not important here. The music is not important here. The voice is not important here. What matters are the words. If you cannot listen to the words, you do not belong here. If you understand this, welcome to the Fate Club. Something is shifting beneath ordinary behavior, not as a decision and not as a breakthrough, but as a quiet redirection of internal flow that does not ask for permission and does not wait for understanding. The system that once organizes perception through reaction, comparison, urgency, and external signal is still running, but it is no longer dominant, no longer central, no longer convincing in the way it once is. Attention used to move outward first. It scans faces, outcomes, numbers, tone, response. It waits for confirmation before it settles. It waits for resistance before it adjusts. This outward flow once feels efficient, even necessary, because it creates alignment with the environment and reduces uncertainty through feedback. Now that flow weakens, not dramatically and not all at once, but through a gradual thinning, as if pressure that once pushed attention outward is slowly releasing. The pull of reaction softens. The urgency to be seen loses momentum. The nervous system no longer treats external response as primary information about safety or direction. This is not confidence. This is not withdrawal. This is not clarity. This is a redistribution of energy inside the organism, where less force moves outward and more current begins to circulate internally without narrative. Lower-order processing still exists. Habit, reflex, social timing, and learned performance continue to operate, but they are no longer reinforced with the same intensity. The body still knows how to perform, but the reward signal attached to performance fades. Action happens, but the echo does not return. At the same time, another channel becomes perceptible. It is not new. It is simply no longer drowned out. A subtle internal sensing begins to register before thought, before language, before justification. This sensing does not argue. It does not motivate. It does not persuade. It presents alignment as ease and misalignment as friction, without explanation and without emotional charge. When attention follows this signal, the system remains stable. When it moves against it, tension accumulates quietly, without drama and without story. This feedback is immediate and internal. It does not require witnesses. The mind attempts to translate this shift into familiar frameworks, but fails repeatedly. There is no metric that captures it. There is no social mirror that reflects it accurately. The old language of success, purpose, and identity cannot hold it without distortion. This failure creates a temporary void, not emptiness, but lack of orientation. The scaffolding that once guided movement through approval and resistance dissolves, and nothing rushes in to replace it. In this space, behavior slows. Choices become fewer and quieter. The system stops optimizing for visibility and begins conserving coherence. This is not a moral improvement. It is not growth in the traditional sense. It is an adaptation to saturation, to overload, to an environment where lower-order reward loops no longer produce stability. Stress chemistry adjusts. Baseline arousal lowers. The constant microsurges created by anticipation of response diminish. The body enters a state that feels neutral, and neutrality is often misread as loss. From the outside, this looks like disengagement. Drive appears reduced. Ambition seems to evaporate, but internally, energy is no longer leaking outward through constant calibration. What changes is not the capacity to act, but the reason action initiates. Instead of reaction, movement now arises from internal consistency. Instead of display, action follows resonance. This resonance is not emotional. It is structural. It is the system recognizing when its internal signals align without friction. Lower-level processes still generate noise. Comparison still appears. Old desires still surface. But they no longer command behavior automatically. Attention notices them without attachment. The system does not suppress them and does not obey them. They pass through as residual signals from an older operating mode. As this continues, perception itself changes. Time compresses. Future projection loses intensity. The present moment no longer feels like a means to an outcome. There is less urgency to explain oneself, less impulse to be recognized, less need to maintain a consistent narrative across contexts. Identity begins to thin. Roles loosen their grip. Labels lose relevance, not because they are rejected, but because they no longer organize experience efficiently. This thinning can feel destabilizing at first. Without a strong identity, the system feels exposed. But exposure gives way to simplicity. Existence continues without constant self-reference. Breathing continues. Attention continues. Action continues. But now action does not need validation to confirm its reality. It occurs because it fits, not because it reflects. The internal signal that guides this state does not promise reward. It does not threaten punishment. It simply indicates coherence or incoherence. This is often mistaken for intuition, but it is more precise than that. It is the nervous system operating without external override, responding to internal conditions rather than external demand. As reliance on this signal increases, lower-order loops weaken further. The chase for approval collapses on its own. The fear of disapproval loses leverage. This collapse is not dramatic. There is no moment of decision. There is no declaration of independence. There is simply a growing inability to care in the old way. Reaction fails to ignite. Validation fails to anchor. The system outgrows a structure designed for earlier conditions. A structure optimized for scarcity of signal collapses in an environment of excess. What replaces is not a higher ideal, but a quieter mode of functioning. One that requires less energy. One that tolerates ambiguity. One that does not require constant confirmation. This mode feels empty only when measured against older standards. Measured internally, it feels stable. There's less movement, but more continuity. Less excitement, but more endurance. Less narrative, but more presence. This is not enlightenment. This is not escape. This is biological and cognitive recalibration occurring in real time. Lower-order consciousness does not disappear. It integrates. It loses dominance. Higher-order sensing does not announce itself. It operates silently. Together, they form a system that no longer orients through external reflection, but through internal alignment. The world continues unchanged. Metrics still exist. Recognition still circulates. Noise persists. But participation becomes selective. Optional. Non-compulsory. Approval can be received without absorption. Criticism can be noticed without internalization. Neither defines direction anymore. What is changing is not belief, but flow. Not thought, but orientation. Not personality, but regulation. Something in us is moving from reaction to sensing, from reflection to coherence, from external authority to internal signal. This movement is already happening. It does not wait. It does not explain itself. If you understand this, welcome to the club.